What's your favorite thing about video games? Is it the gameplay itself, the combat, the systems, the exploration, story, characters, or is it forced politics, forced diversity? Because what we've got here is a leaked Insomniac inclusivity training video. This was part of that ransomware attack from a little while ago where Insomniac Games, the Sony-owned studio, they do Ratchet and Clank, the recent Spider-Man titles as well, and in that leak, heaps came out of it. We know about the future Wolverine game, X-Men, all of their financials, but something that piqued my interest was this inclusivity program. We're always told that diversity in games, oh, it's all natural. If you think it's getting in the way of the quality of the game, that is just your problem. But this is basically proof that they are forcing this in here by any means necessary. And the reason I have a problem with it is whenever this sort of stuff is forced into a title, it just seems to bring the quality of a game right down. I care about a game's integrity. I care about the quality of the game first and foremost. I don't care about political messaging. Keep that out of it. And this forum post just kind of broke things down, starting with this tweet. Insomniac's culture studies and protocols, including mandatory Discord sessions with queer, African American, and Asian groups. So just imagine you're a developer, you're trying to do your job, and then you have to get on a Discord session with a queer person to be lectured to. No wonder AAA games are mostly garbage. How do you do your job with that happening? And then following this up, there was a 10-15 minute long video. I didn't watch all of it, but it was essentially just a bunch of people saying games are no good, they need to be more diverse. Me, who cares about the quality of the game? They basically asked people who obviously do not care about video games and are probably just serial whingers. They were going to give them the responses that Insomniac wanted to hear, which is all games need more diversity, it doesn't matter about the gameplay, that should be the last priority. It should all be about politics. And then we've got here Inclusion Champions, Insomniac Games, and this is who we spoke with. 45 consumers across all communities. And do you reckon that they went out on the street and just asked 45 random people what they thought? No, they sought out people who would validate them and would tell them exactly what they want to hear, which is gamers are bad. Games are sexist, they're racist, they all need to be changed fundamentally to suit our politics. And we can see here that they asked 9 Puerto Rican people, 7 LGBTQ women. Why did they have to be women? Was LGBTQ men not good enough? Did you not get enough points for that? Okay. 13 Afro-Latinx. I don't even know what that means. Is that like a Latina with an Afro? I can't keep up with any of these terms. You've got the 5 experts as well. Oh, look at these people. Again, professional whingers. These are not people who care at all about video games. They got into their field, whatever they were doing, to push the message, to push some sort of agenda. We've got here down the bottom, Kayla Upadhyaya, media culture writer for Autostraddle, a magazine for lesbian, bisexual, and queer women. She's an LGBTQ expert, apparently. That's a qualification. Is that real, or is that a label that you gave yourself? I'm guessing the latter. And then we get a bit more in depth. While other media has made strides, video games are stuck in the past, still suffused with stereotypical portrayals. Oh no. And you might not be able to see this on the right, but I'll read it out. Women in games. Although authentic representation in video games is poor across all groups, consumers point especially to the portrayal of women in games as offensively hypersexualized. Either the role itself or the appearance. It's rare to see a female character in a game who looks typical or who they can actually relate to. Who do you think the men are who are consuming video games? Do you think they look like Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid? Geralt from The Witcher 3? Most gamers are unattractive, they're unfit, they're probably overweight. They don't want to play as someone who looks like them or resembles them in real life. They want the fantasy. They want to play as someone really cool. If they were themselves, they probably can't get past level 1 in the video game. That'd be immersion breaking. That wouldn't make sense. So the idea that women or gamers in general can't enjoy what they're playing unless the player character resembles them, that is garbage. Just be honest. The reason you're saying this is you're salty that men are having a good time, basically. The average gamer, they play, they enjoy it. You can't have that. There's going to be a problem with it. There's too much fun here. We need to insert our politics and change things. It's all bad. And they go on to say here, with the vast proliferation of new series and what's often alluded to as the golden age of television, that is garbage. If there was a golden age, it was like 10, 15 years ago with Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, maybe early Game of Thrones, that sort of stuff. It is not right now with garbage Netflix shows that feel like propaganda. If you think this is the golden age, you are absolutely kidding yourself. TV is the arm of the media that's made most progress when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I know, that's why it sucks. Expectations have evolved from just greater numerical representation of various identities to more nuanced, heartfelt deceptions, partly stemming from the extra narrative complexity and fluidity afforded by the structure of serial TV. These shows you're talking about are dumbed down shite. They're like fast food. It's basically Macca's TV. There's nothing complex about these shows. You're purely saying that because you like the agendas that they're pushing. The actual entertainment value, it's not there. People are sick of it. TV's success here has exacerbated the issue when it comes to video games, highlighting their relative lack of progress. Is that really true? Because last time I looked into it, Netflix were having to stop people sharing accounts because they were losing revenue. People were unsubbing. So if it's really having success, why are they having to money grub that hard? Clearly people aren't tuning in and you're being deluded pretending it's this huge success, the shows are better than ever, purely because it suits what you want. In video games, representation in terms of just seeing these characters is still abysmal. And when they do appear, they're one-dimensional, stereotypical portrayals. Those are dominant. This lowers the standard significantly as consumers simply expect less from video games because they've been so poor to date in terms of inclusivity. Well, actually, gamers just want a good video game. They don't care about this stuff. You are in like the 1% of insane individuals who focus on this and nothing else. You don't even care about the quality of the game. You play something, the game itself is genuinely insufferable, but someone identifies as they, them, and then you say, oh, the game's incredible, it's very special. That is the only metric that counts for you. And then they mention the good news for PlayStation is that any and all advances will be very welcome here. Thank God I mainly play on PC and I don't even own a PS5. I'm happy to consume their games if they're good on Steam. I'm never buying a PS5, especially after reading this. And in the next section, we've got most diverse characters are relegated to the sidekick role rather than granted their own personality. Why do they have to be the main character to have a personality? There's so many games, so many movies where the most interesting person in it is not the main, it's the villain, or it is someone in a supporting role. This is just more dog shit. Most Black, Latinx, Asian queer characters aren't fully fleshed out in enough depth, according to consumers. Which consumers? These 45 people you specifically had to find to suit your agenda? You probably went through thousands of people to find these morons. The vast majority of consumers, they just want a good video game. They don't want this. They don't look up the Steam reviews and go, oh, it's got a thumbs up, but is it diverse enough? No, no one cares. Instead, they serve as accessories to the leads. Within this sidekick role, their persona is often intended to offer comic relief. Whether the sassy black girlfriend or comically awkward Asian nerd, I can't even remember seeing these stereotypes anytime recently, and I consume not just current media, but a lot of old media as well. It seems like you've occasionally found this and you're pretending it's a stereotype that crops up all the time. You probably have to search through like 15 movies to even discover this, and then you pretend it's widespread. Get out of here. And then in quotes here, someone said, queer people's experiences aren't just comic relief, or they're a fun little sprinkle on top of everybody else's lives. And that is from Jordan, an LGBTQ. I thought you didn't ask any men who are LGBTQ. I guess Jordan must be a woman. Yeah, I guess that happens. Why is this such a huge problem? If you're a minority and that's your identity, you're always banging on about that. Why does this have to be in everyone's faces who just want to consume a fun piece of media? It seems like you will not stop until we're forced to look at a screen 24 hours a day with content that validates you. That's really your end game here, let's be honest. And then we've got here, Spotlight, perceptions and protagonist updates. Most consumers appreciate when familiar characters get remade or updated, but only when the story happens through a new lens. While consumers' personal opinions ranged, the general consensus appears to be agree that updating a protagonist's identity is fine and even appreciated so long as it serves to show a different take on the narrative. Again, who did you ask? These 45 people were curated. They told you what you want. You didn't ask the wider general public because they will tell you this sucks. It is never good. Look at all the Disney movies that are utterly failing. Why don't you just look at the actual numbers? Why did you ask 45 people? Look at the box office. No one wants to see The Little Mermaid or Wish or whatever diverse movie that you've put out. Rather than accept that, accept those financials, accept reality, you've had to create your own bubble, your own little world. That's what this is. And they go on to say that updating a protagonist's identity is fine as long as it isn't done for the sole purpose of being more inclusive. And let's be honest, that is the only reason it's done these days. The core of the story can remain, but the remake or update to the narrative universe can't ignore the realities that come with a new identity. So you're pretending that you don't want it to be forced inclusivity, but then you're also saying if you do change them, you've got to absolutely just rip up the old story, you've got to change it all to suit whoever you've put in there, and we like it when this happens. That's what you're really saying. And we do have the Little Mermaid example here, and about this they say, for example, considering the Little Mermaid remake, simply making Ariel black isn't enough to make for a diverse story. Creators need to consider how this identity might pivot her actual story, as well as make sure to reflect subtle inside truths in her persona and surroundings, e.g., acknowledging the reality of black hair in the water. What the fuck does that mean? This is a perfect example of why you should never pander to these people, because you're just going to make no one happy. These people, they'll whinge about, oh, you made her black, but that's not enough, you should have done more. Everyone else can see what you're doing, that you don't care about the quality of the story, you just want to force in an agenda, so then no one sees it, no one spend money, your movie fails. And we've got another quote here from Ian, Puerto Rican consumer, okay. It depends on the story. For example, with The Little Mermaid, from what I gather, it takes place in the Caribbean area. Now, I looked this up. Apparently, the original Little Mermaid story, it probably takes place in Denmark, so it takes place in Europe. So I guess he must be talking about the remake. And then he says, if it takes place in the Caribbean area, I think it makes sense that they change the character to be played by an African-American woman. Sometimes they'll change certain races of certain characters when they remake these movies, just for the sake of inclusiveness. I don't like that. Well, Ian, if you are actually a real person, and this isn't a fake quote, which I think it is, you are a dead set idiot. Because as I mentioned earlier, the original story did not take place in the Caribbean. It took place in Europe. If they change that, and for the remake it's in the Caribbean, they specifically did it so they could have this African-American woman in there. So what are you talking about? That is the definition of forced diversity. They changed the original story just so they could do this and try and pander. It failed because you're not even happy. You're whinging about all of this stuff as well, and you can't even see it. And this is so funny because this person says, I feel that because The Little Mermaid was already out, it already had an original release, I don't feel like they should recreate it with a black person. I think they should give us something new. Why does she have to replace the white girl who plays Ariel? We already got used to that. Let's just leave it. Quay, black consumer. So you're just making no one happy. These idiots who produce this content or greenlight these decisions, they're just morons. And I do just want to mention again, this isn't just random ramblings on the internet. This is training that Insomniac employees have to go through. Again, it's Discord calls with queer people, people who are diverse. You've got to sit on some sort of audio video call and be educated, consume this information, and then you've got to read all of this junk. It just explains so much of why games just don't feel quite right anymore, especially when you play a mainstream product. Something just feels off about it compared to when you play an indie game from the heart, where you know the developer is just focused on the game. They're not trying to push things on you. And you've got here on the right the expert point of view. This is that LGBTQ expert I mentioned early on. And she, or whatever they are, says, If these content creators are not identifying as queer themselves, then make sure that they're talking to queer people and not creating these queer characters in a vacuum of heteronormativity. I don't know what that means. Whether that means bringing in queer writers to help or just talking to queer people, I think the only way to do it authentically is for it to actually come from those perspectives, because it's just not possible for straight people to fully understand queerness. It's not part of their identity. Well, I don't think sexual orientation, is it normal for that to be a part of someone's identity, their day-to-day? Most people are not talking about that unless they're weirdos. And we've got the do's and don'ts. What you should put in games, what you shouldn't. Games, media, all the different stuff they're talking about. The do's: have at least 2 queer people, not all white. Get queer writers. The don'ts: make them all white. Make them one-dimensional. So this is the sort of stuff that video game developers are being hit with. They're basically being brainwashed, and I tell you what this organization would say: oh no, we don't force it on any of our devs. They come in the studio, they just so happen to want to do this because they're good people. Well, you hire them, and you specifically only hire people that agree with your message, your agenda you're trying to pull. You're not just hiring the best people for the job, and they just so happen to love this stuff. You are actively avoiding probably the best people so you can get these morons who want to push it, who aren't passionate about video games, and most of them hate their audiences, the people who genuinely love games. I wanted to highlight this because it is a genuine eye-opener, and we can only hope that indie studios who don't care about this crap continue to develop it, because this is slop. I can't see myself consuming an Insomniac product anytime soon, and given it mentions PlayStation all over this document, I don't think I'll be consuming many Sony games anytime soon either. This top comment, it sums it all up. And people still say that it isn't forced but implemented naturally. When you need to focus on it, it is forced. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.